Okay, I think we'll make a start. Well, thanks everyone for making it out to the webinar on this Thursday afternoon. Very good to see you all here. I'm just jumping into getting ready for performance reviews. So I guess in the words of Babe Ruth, yesterday's home runs don't win today's games. And this is particularly relevant in today's current climate. The impact of COVID-19 on our people and businesses has been sudden and immediate. The future is increasingly uncertain, and our challenge is to remain relevant and ensure that our respective businesses thrive and not just survive. And to achieve this, it's important to recognize that people are our greatest asset, and we need to utilize the right tools in order to maximize the contribution to our workforce. Today, we'll be focusing on the online performance review module, and we'll discuss why you need it now more than ever before. We'll also demonstrate how enableHR administrators can set up the OPR module and get it ready for launch. And before we dive in too much further, my name's Simon, and I'm one of the enableHR Client Success Officers. My background is in supporting software systems and the uses in both public and private sectors. And I work with businesses across all industries and of all sizes. And one thing's for sure, I love technology, and I'm passionate about conveying that kind of technical information in a straightforward and usable format. And you also hear from Esther.
Hello, here I am.
And Esther is an experienced HR manager and the head of HR at FCB Group. Prior to this, Esther was the people and culture manager at Virgin Pulse across their global offices. She is an expert on recruitment, employee experience and retention, performance management, and getting the best out of people at work. So we've set aside about 60 minutes for this webinar. However, we understand that some of it is quite detail heavy, so we're aiming to take maybe about 45 minutes. We'll see. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type them in the webinar chat. So it should be just down the bottom, either in the Q&A section or the webinar chat. That's fine. Along with your name and company, and we'll be able to contact you directly to discuss probably further next week. So we'll make sure that we get back to all of you.
Cool, thanks Simon. Good afternoon everyone. Thank you for having us. I know we're all here to talk about launching a review. And I just kind of wanted to quickly make mention that, we might have come across either recently or in the past some stakeholders in our organisations who are thinking, why the heck now? Got so much to worry about. Why are you doing this now? I've actually had that question a few weeks ago. We're internally launching our OPR process next week too. So as we know, it's been a pretty difficult time for us HR practitioners over the last few months. Keeping our employees safe, healthy and happy has definitely been much more of a challenge than it ever has before. And then when we think about maintaining a decent level of employee engagement on top of all that, hitting the magic 70% engagement score, I know my head nearly explodes thinking about all that stuff we have to do. So I'm sure the same says for all of you. So that's why we think doing performance reviews now is more important than ever. Employees right now are worried about their jobs. Some may feel disconnected. Some may worry about working remotely, dealing with reduced levels of communication and reduced feedback for their work. So for most organisations, I would assume a pay rise to reward our staff is probably out of the question due to the current economic climate. So in this situation, the performance review process plays a much larger role in employee recognition and therefore job satisfaction. So the one thing we can do for our employees and businesses is to continue some of our pre-COVID processes and provide people with quality feedback and recognition, and more importantly, set some specific, measurable and exciting objectives and goals to help them to look forward. That along with looking forward to the pubs reopening. So something I always try to remember, this tip I heard ages ago and it's always stuck with me, that we as HR practitioners should be rewarding and recognising employees definitely for producing good work, But as important as that is building their skills. Likewise, we should reward and recognise managers for producing good work. Yep, that's standard, as well as producing good talent. So this all ties back to developing our staff. So to me, a good performance review process should keep staff focused, drive productivity, and definitely boost retention. It'll help to develop and manage career and personal goals of our staff, which might have actually changed quite a bit due to the pandemic recently. It will also allow you to reward employees by giving them a forum in which you can officially recognise and celebrate achievements, again, over and above, potentially salary rewards. And it will provide valuable data you can use at the board or executive level to inform strategy when we do finally transition back to BAU, business as usual. And also it will improve the employee experience. So, we understand the employee's experience may have suffered due to the pandemic, and this will hopefully tie it all back in and hopefully boost that back up. So Simon will explain a little bit more about these points in a moment, but I just wanted to add here quickly that having an easily accessible online record is so helpful in our roles. It centralises all results and holds everyone in the process accountable. So that's not just us as HR, it's the employees and managers as well. So just quickly, I'll touch on those things for you. In my opinion, it holds the employees accountable for their own career and goals. So ESS, or employee self-service, is just that. The onus is on our employees to serve themselves. They can add goals and objectives even at home on their mobile phone while they're watching MasterChef if they want. That's a platform that they can think about and take with them at all times. The system also holds managers accountable by ensuring they keep their promises on anything they've said to their team members. Anything that comes up in a development chat or a one-on-one, like something around a promotion, extra work promised, a catch-up or meeting they're meant to have, some mentoring program, anything that comes up in the review meeting. It holds the manager accountable to those things. And most importantly to me, it holds HR accountable. So we don't have to rely on a manager telling us, oh yeah, caught up with Johnny last week, had a great one-on-one, he's fine. Then we find out actually that this catch up was a beer at the pub on Friday and they talked about holiday plans and their favourite pizza toppings. So a month later, we do Johnny's exit interview and we find out that he's never actually had a development conversation, performance review. He's had nothing along those lines in the last 5 years he's worked here, although we were told he did. So, the online platform holds everyone accountable, and it means we can look back at any point in time and see where people are at within the process. So besides accountability, which I really believe in, some other benefits. Simon, I'll hand to you to chat through those.
Sure, thanks Esther. Well, from a perspective of enableHR, the general purpose of the performance appraisals is to enhance the communication channels between the manager and their direct reports. As we walk through the setup a bit later on, you'll see that the process is relatively straightforward. I would like to note that there are several benefits to using the online performance review module. As an example, you do save paperwork as well as time. The system is designed to streamline and automate the performance review process for you. And as Esther mentioned, it uses the ESS, and this is accessible 24/7 on any internet-enabled device, as well as from a manager and administrative point of view, where you can pull up the reporting 24/7. So in terms of flexibility, definitely there. As well as I'd like to note on that it is customizable. So we recognize that one size does not fit all, and our software produces some flexibility there to empower you to set your performance measures to make sure that they align with your unique performance metrics. And this gets us ready for launch. So like with any software, the process of launching the new technology requires an investment of time up front, and you'll reap the benefits of this investment once launched. In this webinar, we'll ensure that you as the administrators know exactly how to complete the setup and launch of the online performance reviews across your entire organization. enableHR's online performance review module, or I'll just call it OPR, is powered by enableHR Self-Service or ESS. Once the setup of OPR is complete, all you need is an email address against the employee record, and it's as simple as that. Well, let me explain a little further. So if when you launch OPR, it'll automatically launch the ESS platform as well. And for those organizations who have not launched ESS yet, never fear. When you launch OPR, your employees will automatically receive an email asking them to register for the self-service. And when they log in, their OPR assessment tasks will be waiting for them to complete.
Yeah, I'll just quickly jump in here as well. I just wanted to mention that a system-generated welcome email is great. You know, by all means, will prompt employees to log in and begin the OPR process. However, in my experience, I'd recommend as much internal comms as you can manage as well. So make the build up to the OPR really fun and exciting. Make sure you get the executive or senior managers backing this process. Maybe ask the CEO to talk about it at any chance possible. And also try to ensure that the employees know we do this whole process for them and their career progression, which is part of why we do it. It's also for us in the organisation, but hey, they don't need to know that. And so the more that they put into their development planning, the more they'll get out of it, the more they'll get out of their role and of course their career as well.
And you may have seen the emails sent out yesterday. There are a number of training videos that are designed to be viewed by your people managers and your employees. Please feel free to share these internally. They were designed to help train your staff on how to complete their employee assessments and self-assessments. And it's in these videos where you'll gain valuable insights on what the performance appraisal experience will be for your employees and managers. And if you haven't had the time to review these yet, you can view them on enableHR's YouTube channel. So, as I mentioned earlier, each organization can conduct their performance reviews in different ways. And whilst enableHR guides you through the best practice standards, it's important to remember that, again, one size does not fit all. And you'll be pleased to know that enableHR is flexible enough to cater the unique needs of the business or organization. Our clients tend to use this module in a range of different ways. And I mean, here are a few examples. So you can use the key result areas only or objectives only or a mix of both. You can assess performance only and gain feedback on employee engagement and happiness only, or even a mix of all of those. And facilitated and scheduled performance reviews, or even ad hoc performance reviews. The OPR can be used individually on staff or across groups or even teams or departments or locations. There's a lot of flexibility in launching. Measuring performance using custom review periods, so you can do set it for an end of probation or monthly or quarterly, annually, as well as it does pick up notes against the employee's file that have been flagged for performance reviews.
Yeah, and just on this point, I just wanted to mention, you know, the flexibility of the system is great. And we all know that employees really do need and want quite regular feedback. And so the once a year review, which is traditionally what a lot of organisations has done, is sometimes too late. So, you know, we can't typically judge an entire year of work from an individual at one point in time. I mean, geez, imagine if your spouse gave you an annual review this morning. I mean, you'd hope that you cooked them breakfast or got them a coffee or something. So get creative with the system and tailor it to work for you and your business. You can record one-on-one meeting outcomes in the objectives. You can have quarterly check-ins and then wrap it all up in a 6-monthly and then still do the big review, you know, whatever works for you. You can have weekly reviews and, you know, go through the whole process every week if you want. It's probably a bit too much, but, you know, up to you. Either way, you'll know that the full year's worth of feedback, achievements, objectives, meetings are all building up every time they're entered into the system. So every time there's an entry, it'll ultimately make these processes as simple and as comprehensive as possible. If you ever wanted to get a snapshot of how someone's going, you did want to do a full annual review, you know, it's all there for you.
Yeah, it's great points. And I guess in terms of the overview of the process, it's broken down into six simple steps. There are 6 main steps as well, and it's kind of can be viewed as a life cycle more so than just a linear process. And soon I'll jump into the demonstration to cover each one of these in more detail in the hopes that it clarifies the setup and management as well as the reporting of performance reviews from the administrator's perspective. And as a tip, we do find that most of our clients drive and measure performance by job position. And this ensures that the consistency of the key performance indicators across all employees who have the same job position. In saying that, you do have the ability to tailor performance measures according to specific individuals. Say if a team member has been flagged to be a future leader. In this case, you may want to add additional performance metrics to the profile, but more on this later. So as you can see, 6 main steps. Defining is really coming up with the key result areas that match your business, and as well as any rating scales that you may want. Assigning, so you will be assigning these to the employees' records. You can do this individually or in bulk. Again, I'll touch on that later in the demonstration. Initiating is the whole launch. So launching the performance review checklist once the setup has been done, and we'll cover that again shortly. It can be done both individually as well as in bulk. Conducting, so this is the actual managers and employees actually going through the performance appraisals. So that we'll also cover a little bit more, but it is covered in the YouTube videos if you haven't had a chance. And the final 2 are reviewing and finalizing. So that's the kind of finishing off steps after the appraisals have been completed, and it covers the any performance reviews that performance management or salary increases, or maybe not this year, as Esther mentioned before, and reporting. So there is a robust reporting function that you can see where people are up to in the process, as well as the actual metrics of the ratings. And in terms of the experience for your managers and employees, the processes are much the same between the standard and flexible performance reviews. I should mention that we do have 2 different options, and they were built based on client feedback, where the employees and managers provide the employee appraisals and self-appraisals. So that is the same between standard and flexible. The notable difference is where the flexibility comes into play. So the flexible, the initial appraisals have been completed by both employee and manager, and the flexible option allows for managers to first review the initial comments and ratings from the employees. It also allows managers to make any adjustments to their initial assessment if required. You would have seen this in more detail in the completing employee performance assessments flexible process video that was sent out earlier. But other than this, both processes still go through an initial and a final appraisal meeting between manager and employee, then the completion of any objectives for the next period. And in the demonstration later, we'll be covering some of these items in terms of the standard online performance review process. And it's important to note that you can have additional assessors with the performance review. So as a standard, our system allows for, if your employee has more than 2 or more managers, enableHR allows you to include as many assessors or managers in the performance review process as you need. And, they can be invited into the review process to provide their feedback and insights on the employee performance. And I've even seen success with some people using it as a peer feedback tool. So again, get creative.
And then a major part, as I mentioned before, is setting your objectives in the system. What I'm sure we've all seen before is the SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic and timely. This definitely is the process that we should follow when setting objectives through enableHR as well. And just to kind of reiterate my point here, a goal that's set 11 months ago that is now to be assessed in a review won't really be specific, it won't really be measurable, it's not really realistic, it's not timely. So, regular meetings to check in and add or alter objectives is really my hot tip here, and being able to easily do it in the system is just a benefit.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I guess this leads on to how to track them. Professional objectives and development needs can be identified during the performance review period or at any stage during the employee's life cycle. And objectives can be created and managed in a range of different ways through the use of enableHR. It can be either entered by a primary assessor or even the assessee, so the manager or employee, at the end of completing their performance reviews, and that can be completed via self-service. Employees can submit their personal objectives via self-service at any time throughout the year, and they will go into staged approval for administrators, or managers or even administrators can submit professional objectives from within the core enableHR, and that can be done just directly against the employee record. And this will be shown later when we're in the employee file in the demonstration. And this leads to the demonstration, the part that we've all been waiting for, no doubt. And in the example, this is Jean. So Jean is the HR team leader of Sandwich Eats, a popular food chain. And Jean has been tasked with setting up and managing the performance reviews for the company. So what I'll do is jump into the demonstration. For this portion, I might just switch off my pretty face so you get the full view of the video.
Oh no, does that mean I have to as well? Oh,
it might.
Okay.
All right.
We'll still be here though, so don't forget, keep popping your questions through the Q&A, whether they're directed at stuff that I've said or more about the demonstration. And yeah, we'll get back to you next week.
Absolutely, very good point. All right, I'll just turn off the video and we'll continue. So a good place to start is, if you haven't already seen it, sorry, I haven't had a chance to see the videos yet that we sent out, the training videos. I'll give you a quick experience of what it will look like in the self-service view for your employees and managers. So I'll just switch over to the self-service screen here. Here we go. Here's Warren. So in this example, Warren has been already sent the task via email. He has been requested to start his self-appraisal for the performance reviews. And you'll notice here that there is a task sitting in his inbox within the self-service area. So if you haven't seen the self-service area, this is what it looks like. And you'll notice that here is the task for the self-service performance review. So he clicks on the task, he clicks on performance reviews, and you can see that it is for the last financial year period. You can also see that there are 2 key result areas assigned to him. And for each of these, it does give him prompts of how to complete it. So read the description, refer to the KPIs, and provide a rating and comments that you think are justified, and provide any justification, I should say. So you can click on first key result area. You can see a list of the key result areas on the right-hand side, and you can see the title of the key result area, or I'll just call it KRA. So in this case, it's adaptability. The grouping was OPR demo, just for this, and the description here. So the ability to adjust positively to unexpected factors and impact them. So the description of the KRA will show here. Any of the key performance indicators that were entered will show here, and this is what the rating scale looks like. So in this case, is using the standard rating scale that comes with enableHR. It's a 5-point scale, and as you can see, they're laid out in text here. So does not meet expectations would be a 1 point, and this would be a 5-point exceeding. And it looks like Warren's added in his rating of right in the middle, fully meets expectations, and entered in some comments here. Once he's happy with that, he can go on to the next. And you can see with this one, the key result area is slightly different. So this one doesn't have a rating scale. It's more about feedback. And this kind of links back to what we were talking about, getting creative, and there's flexibility in how and what you want to capture. You can see here that we've made comments mandatory so that we can capture the feedback for the biggest challenge or hurdle in the last 6 months. So this is kind of what we're trying to get to. This is the goal here. So if we go back to the first step in the 6 main steps, what we're looking at is defining and assigning. That's a pretty picture. Okay, so this is Gene's login. He's logged in to the system here. He's in the main screen of the employee module. And all of this setup, so the defining stage, can be completed via the settings and performance review area. From here, this is where it's all designed. So we always recommend kind of best practices starting with the rating scale, because the rating scale can apply to the key result area, and then the key result areas can be grouped. So in this case, as I mentioned before, we saw that Warren had the standard 5-point scale, and you can see that does not meet expectations is a 1 point, consistently 5. But you can notice that Sandwich Eats already have completed a couple of key result rating scales, rather, where it's a 3-point here. The general feedback on manager, no score, but you can select a rating anyway. A simple 1 to 10, so just numerical, and even a 4-point. So in this case, what I'll do is show you how to create it. So it's as simple as clicking this new rating scale. We always recommend entering a code into whether you're creating a rating scale or a key result area. Reason being is that if you want to upload or assign these to your employees in bulk rather than individually, the system uses this code here to capture that. So always best practice to update that and make sure that you know which codes are for which. Helps you down the track for sure. So in this case, we're just going to make a 2-point scale, satisfactory or unsatisfactory. To best capture this, we'll make it so we have a 1 point and a 0 point. We'll need to remove the excess options, and we'll just make the titles satisfactory. Maybe the other way around. What do you think? Here we go. Simple as that. There it is. Ready to use. And this leads me on to the next part, which is the key result areas or the KRAs. As mentioned before, we do have a list of about 30 plus key result areas in the system ready to use already. So these all have the standard 5-point scale, and you might find that that's perfect for your business. So feel free to use that. More than welcome. But in this case, I want to show you how to create a new key result area. And again, you'll notice it's a similar kind of form or similar process to the rating scales itself. And it's just about entering in the relevant information here. So again, I'm entering in a code. The code, as I mentioned before, is important if you're trying to assign these key result areas in bulk rather than individually to all of your staff or to at least a group or department. You can add a description here. And if you remember before, the description came underneath the title. So the title will be up the top and then there'll be description. So that's where this comes into play. And let's use our new rating scale, satisfactory or unsatisfactory. And you can choose whether you want a comment compulsory or not. In this case, we definitely do. We want to hear what Warren has to say, or our employees in general. And we don't want them to be able to skip this one with just an NA. So we want them to choose a rating scale. So we'll choose that as not an option. And I'll just enter in some KPI measures here as well. And pretty it up a little. Perfect. Hit create. And now underneath the standard enableHR ones, we can see it right here. Working environment. And now this leads me on to grouping them together. So the benefit of grouping them is that you can group it in job positions, or you can capture company values, or you can even capture different departments, for example, even locations. So that it really does allow you to capture different areas dependent on how your business or your organization wants to set up the performance reviews. And creating a new grouping is very similar to the other two forms here. So you just click new grouping, enter in a code where applicable, a name, and if you want it to kind of filter under one of these, you can set it as a parent of one of them too. Now you may be asking what the multiplier is. So the multiplier can be used if you want to increase the value of certain grouped key result areas. For example, if it's a commission-based sales role, then maybe the commissions would be weighted higher, or the responses to those queries will be higher. Or if it's company values, maybe that's a higher rating. So you want to make it twice as much or 3 times as much as the other ones. And the way that it works is the multiplier does times against the rating scale. So if it's a 3-point rating scale, it would be 1 times 3 or 2 times 3 or 2 times 2, however they rate it. just as a bit of a background. But in this case, we're going to focus on the business support officers. You can see that it's already been set up with a couple of KRAs, but I want to capture an additional one that we just created, which is the working environment. Great. So we'll update that. Now it's ready to be added. So this performance review administration area is the define stage. Now we're moving on to the assign. So I'll head back to the main employees area, and you can assign these key result areas in individual or in groups. So that's why I grouped it just before. We'll focus on JJ, who's a business support officer. Head over to the performance reviews, key result areas. Okay, he doesn't have any yet. So we can either assign them individually or assign them as a group. So assigning as a group, it's as simple as checking the ones that you want, scrolling to the bottom and assigning. But in this case, we already set up the business support officer, so we may as well use that. So just select the job position and assign groups. And there we go. Already captured that. And while I'm here, it's a good chance to cover the objectives in development. We mentioned them earlier in the webinar. And these can be added at any time during the year. An objective can be added before or after or during the performance review, and it can be completed by clicking this Add Objective button from an administrative or manager perspective. So when we set up the rating scale before, it's important to note that these can be captured, or you can capture a rating for the objective itself. So when you're creating rating scales, keep that in mind. In this case, let's set up an objective for JJ, something around innovation. We'll probably need to go through a bit of innovation in terms of business processes after all this is said and done, especially in the new age of working from home. So I'm just adding to the relevant sections here, you know, if resources are required, if it requires JJ to go through any formal training or half-day training, or if he needs a certain certification or anything like that can be captured here, as well as costs. So this can also be reported on later, and happy to touch on that later on down the track. So if we start this one from the next performance review period, then it will be picked up in the next 12-month performance review. And so I think that'll be relevant in this case. As you can see here, he already has a couple of objectives assigned to him. And so the final point I'll make in assigning is that this is great if you want to do it individually to each employee. Perfect. So this is all part of the setup. But what if you want to capture multiple employees across multiple departments? Well, this is where we have an inbuilt importer, and you can use the Excel spreadsheet. So where I went to was actions, integrations, then to our Excel spreadsheets. And we're focusing on the performance reviews in this case. There are some instructions here on what to do, and it gives you 3 options. This downloads what you've already created. So any created key result areas, you can download that. Any individually assigned key result areas will be shown on this, or grouped ones will be shown here. So if you download this, add in the codes, so that's where the codes come into play, as well as the employee ID, then uploading back to this same area, that'll assign it automatically. And it's worth mentioning as well that in order for administrators to be notified once there is progression in the performance review checklist, so once you've initiated, once you've launched it, and your managers are working through it and your employees are working through it and they've completed the assessments, you probably want to be notified as an administrator. And so that's where the user access roles for Gene will need to make sure that he has the OPR notifications role. So if we click on Gene's user access, so I clicked on settings, usernames and passwords, found his name, access control and roles. Looks like he doesn't have the OPR notifications yet. So let's give him that. Here it is. Perfect. Now Gene will be notified whenever there's an update to whenever the managers and employees complete their appraisals, which is exactly what you wanted as an administrator. Now this moves on to the launching phase. So what we've done is we've set up the key result areas, we've grouped it into the job positions that we need. We've even assigned it to the right person, to JJ, and now we want to launch. So what are the options to launch? So there is an individual and a bulk method. So you may have already spied this, but there is a bulk launch checklist option. In this case, you can see that Jean has already created a couple before, but let's show you how. So it's as simple, again, clicking the dark blue button, create a new bulk launch. You can type the name of your performance review. In this case, we're focusing on the original. We're going to capture the employees for this time round, and then you can choose which office or location. So in this case, let's click on the Melbourne and Sydney offices. And if we click next, it'll show a list of all the employees which are underneath those branches in enableHR. And then you can select from here or deselect those who you don't want to launch the checklist yet. So in terms of launching in batches, this is how it can be captured. You can send it out by department, by location, and you can set it like that. It just makes it a little bit easier if you want to batch it, or you can just select all and then it captures everyone. So once you're happy with this, you can go down to the next button and it will set up the checklist steps. So here you can pre-fill the checklist steps and it'll allow you to pre-fill it for all employees. So it does save you time rather than individually stepping through each checklist for each employee. That's the main point of this. So it will take a little bit of time because we have quite a few people in the list. But if I go back to one that I have prepared earlier, sound like a cooking show, you can see that this will be the next stage. So we selected the records, and then you can select the date of the performance review start date, performance review end date, and rather than having to enter it into each individual, you can just select this top gray bar and it will flow down, a little waterfall. And here you can also select the primary assessor and additional assessors. So if they do have the same managers, this one team has all the same manager, it's simple as clicking select assessor and selecting whoever it would be. In this case, probably the district manager. And there we go. So now Jimmy Cricket, the manager for all of these people, is ready to go. So we just need to click launch and then it will launch this across all of the employees. Great. So that's how you do it in bulk. How do you do it individually? It's all driven by this employee management area. So employee management, you'll notice there are two with description here. And in this case, we're going to focus on scheduled performance reviews. And we'll initiate one for JJ, who we just set up as the business support officer. There he is. And we'll get started in the checklist. So you'll notice that there are similarities here to what the bulk launch checklist captured. In a way, what it's doing is it's starting, however many checklists all in one go. That's probably the benefit of the bulk launch checklist. But if you just need to capture a certain number of employees, this might be easier for you. Again, it's all about that flexibility. So if we just go to, oops, what am I doing? 30th of June, 2020. So that's the performance review period that I just set up. So between July and June, we'll start from today. And we'll give them 2 weeks to get this completed. There you go, 2 weeks. And now there are prompts here to review the copies of the employee's job description, any performance warnings, any commendations, if the most recent performance review. So if you've already completed one previously, you might have uploaded it. You can always check that. This has been designed as a kind of a best case step-by-step checklist for you to make sure that you are capturing the full story with this employee. So in this case, Gene is the HR lead and he'll be looking after JJ's performance review, so assigned to me. And Joe's already been accepted or selected rather, so that's great. And if we wanted, we could assign an additional reviewer here. So once we're happy with this, once we've assigned the key result areas, so we've created the key result areas and rating scales, we've assigned it to Joe, we've made sure that we've selected on the correct assessor and we've got everything ready, so we're ready to launch. And it's launching is this generate button. Before you do that, you can always preview to make sure that you've captured everything you want. Great. And once we hit the generate button, it'll change how it looks in the checklist. And now it's waiting. Okay, so that's fantastic. So now we're up to the 4th stage. So we've gone through 1, 2, and 3. 3 was the launch, 4 is conducting. So this is where the managers and employees step in. The performance appraisals will be completed by the employees and the people managers. And the short YouTube videos that we sent out just yesterday will provide you with great insight on how this is completed for employees and managers. And managers will be prompted in the self-service to track the date of the face-to-face meeting and will need to do their final ratings and comments. But the same experience is had for both employees and managers in terms of completing and stepping through the key result areas, as I showed earlier. And there is a performance review report to identify who's completed it and who hasn't, so you can chase up as needed. I'll show that a little bit later in the reporting stage when we get to it. And what I'll show you now is the email that is received by both once the performance review has been generated. So Jean gets an email saying, hey, look, you've been assigned a new performance appraisal in self-service for Warren Jones. Great. And Warren here has been notified saying that, hey, there's a new self-service appraisal for you. Log in and you can complete this assessment. So that's how your employees and managers get notified as soon as you click that generate button or you click the launch button in the bulk launch. So we've done define and assign, we've launched and conducted. Now we're up to reviewing and finalizing. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll switch to Warren, to another employee record that I set up before, who had just completed the self-service appraisal and the manager had completed it as well. So this is Sonny Thompson. Great. So you can see here, similar period, gave 2 weeks. Sonny has completed it. Jean has completed as the manager. Fantastic. Jean as the HR team leader, remember how we set up the OPR notifications? He was notified saying, hey, look, there's a task here. Make sure you jump in. The appraisals have been finished. And so this is where it would show up. So once the performance review has been completed, this step would trigger and send off a task to anyone with OPR notifications. Good thing we switched it on before. And now, I guess it depends on your internal processes and how you'd like to complete this performance review checklist. You can empower your people manager to complete the remainder of this checklist and the steps, and even setting up reminders for the next performance review. And they can also raise any performance management queries, or if there's a raise or anything like that. And this checklist is designed to give not only you as an administrator, but your people managers and whoever uses it as a best practice workflow, in addition to meeting any legislative requirements. And I should mention it was any checklists in the system. They were designed by our law partner, FCB Group, to ensure that we do meet that compliance. So in this case, for Sonny Thompson, not receiving a promotion or increase as per probably the current climate due to COVID, and no, there is a bit of a change to their employment contract. So you can click yes. And if there's a new job description, you click yes or no, and this will unlock these next steps. So if we take it back and take it back, you can see that these are locked. So in order for them to unlock, you just need to click, okay, no for a performance review increase. However, there will be a slight change to the employee contract. There we go. And so this prompts you here to create the amendment letter or an even email. the employee once finalized. So in terms of improvement plans or no improvement plans, it's the same kind of logic here. So these final steps, you know, if there are any performance management discussions that need to be had, or even letters or warnings, you know, you can click yes, and it allows you to create the letter all via this checklist. So it is kind of a one-stop shop for this kind of thing. And I guess finally and importantly, the second to last step is setting up a reminder for the next period. And that's as simple as clicking on the button. You can set up the reminder here for the specific date, maybe, what is it, 2021. And we can set it for about the same time next year. And you can add some comments here, you know, make sure you set up the next performance review, and it can be set up and sent even to specific people or just users with employee record alert notifications turned on. Okay, so by completing this checklist, we're done. That's it, right? So we've set up, we've defined the key result areas. We've assigned the key result areas to the employees. We've launched the checklist for the managers and employees. The employees and managers have conducted the appraisals and the ratings for each other. And then we have come up to the final stage here, which is reviewing and finalizing. And now the reporting. So that's all done. That's the performance review for another 12 months, 6 months, 2 months, however often you'd like to do it. And I'll show you the reporting module now and a few key reports that you can run. So I just selected on the reporting module here. Online performance reviews is where we'll really be focusing on for the performance reviews, the performance review reports, sorry. And so it's as simple as generating. So here you can see a list of all the people who you've created the performance review for, the employee type. So if you've completed it for contractors or employees, it will show here the branch or location that the employees are in when they submitted it. And then you can see who the assessor is, who the manager is, and have they assessed it. So it looks like Jennifer Lopez here is on the ball. However, what's Casey doing here? Looks like their employees completed it, fantastic, but we're still outstanding. So we know to chase up Casey, the manager, in this respect. And that's pretty good for you to use, you know, throughout the process. So if you're wondering where it's at, so it's been a week and you haven't really had many notifications coming through to your email saying, hey, there's a task with self-assessment and assessments have completed, you can run this report and it will help you keep a finger on the pulse there. As well as, you know, you can go through the results. So you can see what the scoring and the trends and the averages were for the key result area groups. So let's say we want to focus on business support officers because we just did that for, you know, Joe employee. You can run that and you can say, okay, I want specifically business support officers, or I want just the customer service team and I want to run a report and all that. So if I just leave it as all for now, we can generate the report. And it will show up here. So you can see that in this case, John Sweety's already finished the report and he had 6 key result areas assigned, total of 6, and his rating was 3. So that tells me that on average, he hit somewhere right in the middle. So out of an average of, or a total of 6, he hit about 3 on average, meaning that, you know, maybe he needs some more support or development in the future, and that can be captured with the objectives. And so that's the performance review process using enableHR. It's 6 main steps. I'm hoping that this is kind of uncovered and removed some of the fogginess about how to do it. It just requires a little bit of setup, and then once it's launched, you know, you can put that responsibility onto your managers to follow through with their employees. And this leads me on to the final component, and I can see that people have been sending through questions, which is perfect. Thanks for that. I'd recommend that if you have anything that's been popping up, throughout, you know, the intro or even the demo here, please type it in now and we'll make sure we get back to you early next week. And, you know, if you can leave your name and company, that would be fantastic. And I should also mention that we do have a robust knowledge base with quite a number of articles that really do outline, probably in step-by-step detail, how to create each one of these steps. So if you're more of a text-based person rather than visual, perfect, we have that there. And I should also mention that the YouTube videos that we created are a great little 10-minute or so instructional videos that you can send to your managers and your employees. Otherwise, you're welcome to contact the client support or client success team with your queries, and we'll make sure to respond, you know, whether it's by phone, email, etc. Other than that, that's kind of wrapping up to a close. I'll throw out to Esther if you'd like to add anything else.
No, all good from my side, Simon. Really, really informative. Very good.
Okay, fantastic. Well, other than that, we'd like to thank you for your time this afternoon. Hopefully you got something out of it and you're ready and raring to set up your OPR now and getting ready for your performance reviews. So apart from that, you know, I'd really like to thank you for attending. Great to see you all here. And if there's anything else, just reach out.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good afternoon.